Hello, Rachel.
Hello, Ryan. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing very well. I was going to ask how you're doing. You know what I should have replied with? I should have replied like Jakar. Oh, yes. I'm doing very well.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Rachel, I'm doing well. You're doing well. In fact,
somebody else is doing well, I think.
we're not alone for this one. We've brought in a guest. We thought, hey, we can't handle this religious festival on our own. We need a third
all
person.
about meeting of ideas and exchanging of cultures.
Unless you're Garibaldi, who says, fuck that. I don't give a fucking shit about your religion. I'm
Dude
a security
passed out
guard.
right on the fucking table. Oh, no, that was not Garibaldi. That was the other guy. He passed out
that
on
was
the
another
table.
guy. So we are joined by Julian from A Strange New Pod. Hello, Julian.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. And yes, Rachel, I am well as well.
We're all well here. So, for those listening, who is everyone, except for us in the conversation, this is the YumYumPodcast because of the iconic line of dialogue from Star Trek Discovery's second season, Yum Yum. It was so beautiful, it was so magnetic that we had to name ourselves after it. We used to cover Discovery, but that's on break for the moment. We're waiting for new Discovery. We're all thinking, will Commander Nan-D return in the next season of Discovery? We sure hope so, because we need someone to say yum yum. But for the time being, we're rewatching and covering episodes of Babylon 5 one at a time. So that does mean spoilers, people, so ye have been warned. Now, Julian, tell us a bit about yourself and what you guys do over on A Strange New Pod.
So I am based outside of Philly. We were talking about this off mic. Right outside Philadelphia, or some people like to call it Philadelphia. Depends.
Were you
on...
born and raised?
No, I'm actually a born and raised New Yorker. I was born in Queens, New York City. So that's original. So I've moved from one big city to another big city, and I love it. I'm a city boy at heart. So, and now I live in the burbs, which makes no fucking sense. But here we are. What I do, I run a couple of podcasts. My first podcast is Everything is Permitted, and we talk about film, gaming, and pop culture over here. But you guys know me from Strange New Pod, which was basically a dare to myself. I was basically like, if they actually greenlight this Captain Pike show that they were basically doing a backdoor pilot for in Disco Season 2, I'm going to have to start a podcast on it, right? Because like Captain Pike is my spirit animal. Anson Mount, handsome Ansem, as I like to call him. Is my spirit animal. So
yeah, I learned crazily, like, because I'm used to him as Pike as well now with that hair, the silvering hair. I learned the other day that I was like, oh, he was the main guy on Hell on Wheels.
Yes.
I've watched that whole entire fucking show and I didn't realize it was the same actor because it's been so many years apart and he has, hair-wise, aged rather quickly.
yeah, and he's just so dirty throughout that whole show, too.
Yeah. And not as charming in the way that Pike is charming.
No, more charming with a gun than anything else. What we do over at Strange New Pod, obviously we started out talking about kind of like what we were going to be excited for Strange New Worlds. Then the pandemic kind of kept going, so Strange New Worlds, didn't get put on the back burner, but production was very slow. So our show very quickly turned into, let's just talk about the past, present, future of Star Trek, and that's what we do. We do deep dives into all the different species. We review Discovery. We just started last night our review of season 2 of Lower Decks. So we've been busy. It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, we've still yet to watch the newer stuff of Lower Decks. We like to let stuff kind of bleed out and then watch several episodes at a time, especially when we're not having to cover them for the pod. But thankfully this time round, Lower Decks people listened to us all by saying, yes, international distribution right away, not 8 months later, or however long it was.
Oh, people were so pissed on Twitter because people would post spoilers and shit, and you would just get like, well, you got to stop posting spoilers. Like, we don't have it here yet. I'm like, I can't do anything about that. Like, I
can't blame the people online. I blame like the weird distribution because it's like by the time I can see it, I'm like, well, I already know Riker's in the show, so what's even the point of like it being a surprise? Or I know I should care about Badgie already before the Badgie episode happens to me. Thankfully, that one still lived up to being a very entertaining character, even though all the hype for it was built up for me. But yeah, you guys are just now kind of talking general kind of Star Trek all over the place. You kind of do topic episodes as well. Like I know a little while back you did like Cardassian discussions has been happening, and now you're doing like when the new stuff comes out you cover those, and you're doing a wide spectrum of stuff, and you guys are a lot more kind and forgiving and nice to Discovery than we are.
Yes.
But you guys are kind of like weirdly, or at least you are, weirdly similar-ish note in terms of not as huge into Picard. So I always find it interesting what the line is there. Like, why is that line drawn? Because we talked about it in our Picard episode. It's like, to us, they're very similar shows.
I think one of the major differences between Discovery and Picard, like Picard, I think right from the get-go, 3 episodes in, just suffered from like massive pacing issues. The show didn't know how to get off its own feet and like get into space, which was a massive issue. And then
once we had to pick up Elnor.
Well, yeah, and then there's Elnor, which, listen, I like Elnor. I know some people don't like Elnor. I'm a big Elnor fan. I don't know. I like warrior monks. Sue me.
Well, then you do get a lot of those in Picard.
Yeah, exactly. But then it's just, I don't know how to explain it. They just spend way too much time in that series with exposition and not enough of like getting to the point. Like dancing on a Borg cube is like a big deal. Like you just don't dance on a fucking Borg cube. Like someone could stick nodes in your throat. Yeah, like at any moment you could have nanoprobes in you. Like, come on, man.
Yeah. So we are talking Babylon 5 for this one, everyone. We're talking Season 1, Episode 5, The Parliament of Dreams. An amazing title. Despite what you think of the episode, that you can tell Harlan Ellison works on Babylon 5, because that's such a TOS title. Like, that feels like so Harlan Ellison in a lot of ways. But could you, Julian, read for us the summary of this episode according to the DVD booklet?
Yes, as you said, this is episode 5 of Babylon 5. Look at what I did there. The Parliament of Dreams, as you said. A religious convocation in the heavens. Earth Central's decision to hold a festival for all alien faiths is a good idea. Yet it's a living hell for Jakar, who learns once arriving faithful is an Assassin's Guild agent hired to kill the Narn ambassador. That was a mouthful.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Welcome to Babylon 5. It's very wordy.
Are you Ambassador Jakar?
This is Ambassador Jakar's quarters. This is Ambassador Jakar's table. This is Ambassador Jakar's dinner. Which part of this progression escapes you?
Rachel, you and I have seen this episode a bunch of times. I want to hit you up first because you ended our previous discussion by saying that this was one of your favorite episodes early on. This was definitely one of the ones that hooked you into the show. What was happening there? What was this journey for you? What's been your history?
I think this was one of the first ones that I watched with you when I was watching it for the first time. And on subsequent rewatches, there are so many cute details that are littered throughout this episode. And the idea of it, I still find really enjoyable.
The religious festivals?
Yeah. But also Jakar facing an assassination attempt and the way that he deals with it.
Yeah. I've enjoyed this episode over the years many a times too. I think, and I can't speak for Julian, he'll talk about his stuff, but when I've watched this with new people like yourself, a lot of people gravitate towards this episode, and I think it's because the pilot movie and the other 4 episodes we've covered, they've been fun and interesting, but I feel like this is the first overtly like high-energy fun episode. Like, it's just silly and funny and quirky, and just like the most serious stuff is Sinclair's love issue, and even that isn't like dour as some of the previous episodes were. And I think a lot of people gravitate towards this because this is what we love about, say, Star Trek. Star Trek will just have some just fun episodes. Like, here's an episode where Moriarty comes to life. That's a fun episode. You're not saying it's a deep episode, but it's fun. And I think I've always enjoyed this episode for that, and I think a lot of people do, but I also enjoy it for the religious festival side of things, because we're talking about Star Trek, wouldn't do this type of episode necessarily the way that this is approached. Star Trek has a very weird relationship when it comes to religion in its shows.
And overall,
which doesn't make a lot of sense, right?
No. No, it doesn't. But Julian, what did you think? What was your relationship with this? And what's been your relationship with Babylon 5?
So far, you guys know how, first of all, I felt about that 2-hour movie. I will never get those 2 hours of my life back, but that's
it breached your pleasure threshold?
Well, that's one way of putting it. I will try and remain kind about that, but that was some sobering television. Since then, it's been a mix of really good and kind of meh, a little bit boring to me, but this episode was really fun. My favorite episode so far has actually been the one directly following the 2-hour movie where I think it's the first one where Jakar, I think, does an attack on, forgive me, I'm still learning everybody's names, the senator's people, and he's going to kill him. And they're like, just don't do it, because then I'd have to arrest you, and that's a lot of paperwork. And I thought that was a really good, deep, way to get you into the show after was a really bad, pilot movie. But there's been some weird ones, the infection one was weird with the organic armor.
That goes in a direction.
Yeah, and then the episode at the end is have you noticed that Sinclair's been throwing himself in danger? It's because he has PTSD, guys. Yeah. He's kind of fucked up.
But I immediately love this one just because so far I love Jakar the most anyway. So it was kind of perfect that this was, a really Jakar-centric episode. Him singing in this episode just got me right into it. I was like, okay, Jakar is singing. This is going to be his episide. Let's go.
So happy with his dinner, and just in that moment, so relaxed.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that you gravitated towards Jakar, because the show, a lot of people, it's Londo or Jakar, or Londo and Jakar. And I feel like this episode it's the first big centric Jakar one. We've had him in a couple of other stories, but this is from his point of view, and we see that he's a lot lighter of a character, but not as goofy as he was in the pilot film. In the first episode, the one that you like, The Midnight on the Firing Line, they switched up Jakar by giving him a victimhood complex, his people were oppressed, and that's where the anger comes from. And you still have this issue here in this episode, but here Jakar is having fun. He's running around hiring bodyguards and shit like that. So it's presenting us still that goofiness that we saw from the original pilot movie, but it's not as cranked up and as high as that. Still pretty cranked up.
He doesn't show off his gills.
No, he doesn't show off his gill implants.
No, he does not.
But he does breathe an alien atmosphere here, so they're following through.
No oxygen mask?
Gill implants. Painful to use, but
efficient.
Precisely.
Does this still hold up for you as a fun one?
Yeah.
What about it did you really enjoy?
I really enjoyed the pacing of this episode and how the storylines are balanced. I feel like everything gets the right amount of weight and the right amount of time, and it's interesting that this is the point where they introduce Lanier.
Yeah, Lanier comes in during the religious festival, which makes sense. He's a religious guy.
Yeah.
I enjoyed this one too. It's not my favorite of the ones we've watched so far. I think, the Born to the Purple episode is my favorite. I'm a Londo fan. But I really did. What I got out of this episode is the fast pace of it. This one really does feel like it's just running 110%. Jakar getting some much needed fleshing out. I like the comedy of this episode quite a bit. And I like, in comparison to some of the previous ones, this does feel like it's hitting upon, finally, one of Babylon 5's major themes, which we've been hinting at, but it really is here, which is science, fiction, but also religion. This is finally touching upon that nerve, because we've been presented in some of the other episodes, Delenn has a religious background, she's a part of the religious cast, all this. But we haven't really got to see what Babylon 5 looks like when it dives headfirst into the religious world, and what our characters are like when they're presented with religion. And I like that about this episode quite a lot, like how Garibaldi is very dismissive of every single religion in this episode. Sinclair is trying to be appreciative, but also he's more interested in this woman from his past. And Ivanova's just having a fun time at every religion. She seems to be having a wicked time. And Jakar kind of refusing to participate in most of the religious things.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Julian, what were some of the aspects of this episode that hooked you into this one in comparison to some previous episodes?
For one thing, I've noticed watching this show immediately that there's a lot of eating and drinking on this show. Like people are getting wasted, they're eating a lot of food. Like Londo passing out on the table was just like, okay, I'm in. This episode can go any direction, and I'm in. And I, like you said, Ryan, like this is a really fast paced episode, and I enjoyed that. The one thing I think that did slow it down was like Sinclair's, kind of like love story, but it was still enjoyable. But I really like that. And then listen, like I said, Jakar, whenever he's kind of the focus, I've enjoyed the show more. Like I love his sarcasm, and I really love his passive aggressiveness.
I do
like,
too.
He's so fucking passive aggressive. Oh, I can't. I love him.
When you see Jakar, since your Star Trek podcast, you obviously recognize that actor from Star Trek as Tomalak.
Yes, and yes, Tomalak.
Is it weird to see that actor that you've probably known for most of your life, who is just Tomalak, in this particular role, in which he's still kind of snooty, but in a different way, and also still covered in heavy prosthetics?
So here's the thing, actually. It's not weird for me, because I think part of the reason is when I grew up watching Trek, like when watching TNG, when this was on in the 90s, like I think this was also, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong, I think was also in syndication alongside other Trek. So like it would come on, and like I never watched it religiously, and I never, watched it all the way through. But like if an episode was on, like I would do something else in the room and watch bits and pieces. So like I've seen him off and on for years. So seeing him on screen and knowing it's Tomalak, it hasn't thrown me off at all. It's actually, I kind of identify with him more as Jakar, even though this is kind of my first time really watching the series, than he does as Tomalak.
Yeah, I agree. Like, also, when I have the opposite effect where I watch him as Tomalak and I'm just like, Jakar? You're not getting a lot to do, Jakar, even though he's kind of like the main Romulan that they encounter.
Yeah,
a
no,
lot.
I'm just going to sit on my Romulan warbird and say nasty things to Jean-Luc.
And two of the times I appear, they're not even the real version of me. They're either an illusion or a past variant of myself. So it's like, it doesn't even count. It's like, okay. Rachel, Jakar, let's talk about Jakar. When you were watching this that first time, what were your opinions on Jakar, and how did this episode shift those or reinforce those opinions?
Yeah, it did feel like a recalibration of Jakar's character, of like, okay, we're going to adjust the silliness, the sass, we'll keep that, maybe turn it up a little in certain scenes.
Turn the sexiness over here.
We're really going to play up that he fucks, and he fucks human women.
Fucks human women.
Can I interrupt real quick and make a note about that? Because one of my favorite lines from this episode is, not my place to speculate how anything gets into your bed.
Yeah. Oh, Natoth. She is instantly a very likable character.
Yep.
But yeah, it does feel like a recalibration. And it feels like they're still finding their groove with this character, because even this version of Jakar, for someone like me who's a long-time viewer, and even a viewer of later episodes of this particular season, still feels like a slightly different version of Jakar. Weirdly enough, I think the next episode, Mind War, the version of Jakar there that they play up more so is what I think of earlier him being, where Here, he's very funny. He screams a lot. He shrieks. He has all of these over pronunciations of words. I love how he talks when he's with the big bug guy, Nagraf.
I also love his quarters.
I love his quarters, how they're like bright red and he has rocks for chairs and a bed.
But he still has like a human bed.
Yeah, for the ladies.
For the ladies.
For the ladies.
I disagree. I don't think those panties look hot pink, but that may just be the lights.
They look pink enough for me. Julian mentioned it. The song. His little song where he's preparing his meal, which is a giant pig's head. And he's like sprinkling all of these herbs on it. We talked about with Garibaldi in the first episode how they gave him duck dodgers. The end of that episode, he had duck dodgers as his comedic reveal that Garibaldi's actually more of a dork than we imagine him to be. And it was an endearing quality. I think this is the similar thing for Jakar, where Jakar, up until this point, has been prudish, he's been antagonistic, but then once we cut to him in his quarters, and he's singing a cute little song about fishies, and how he's preparing his meal, and he just wants to eat his meal. The guy comes in, he's like, "Are you Ambassador Jakar?" And he's like, "Well, is this Ambassador Jakar's table? Is this Ambassador Jakar's dinner that he's going to be eating?" It makes him a really, feels more like a fleshed out little character that exists outside of the plot lines that we know him to be in. Just like you can imagine, Jakar in his spare time, he's having sex with ladies, he's eating food, and like you said, Julian, this is a show, I guess I take this for granted, this is a show where they eat food. It's not like they just drink tea and coffee like in Star Trek.
They're literally talking about like making reservations at restaurants, like they're going to like the Four Seasons or something.
They call it Fresh Air on Babylon 5, the fanciest restaurant. But, the Fishies song, Rachel. I love there's this touch where when the guy beeps at his door or whatever and he has to deal with it, and then at the end of the scene, you see Jakar lean over and grab the little creature, whatever, what was it, like a little crab or whatever, yabby or whatever.
One of his side dishes.
That was still alive. He grabs it because it was running off the table and he's like, "Come back here, you," and puts it back. And it's just like, Andreas Katsoulas clearly just nailed that take of being like, "Oh no, it's running away. We better bring it back," which is endearing. The fish song, and of course, you mentioned it, Julian. I love Jakar's sassiness in this scene as well, where he gets the video call. And I love it's a pre-recorded call, but the way it's directed and the way Jakar plays it, it's like they're having a back and forth conversation. Where the guy's just like, "I'm dying. No, by the time you get this, I'm dead." And he's just like, "Great, awesome, wonderful. Good job."
Like,
you're
he
dying.
can't even let the guy have the last word. Like, even though he knows that this is a pre-recorded message and, like, that guy's dead and it doesn't matter what he says. He's like, I have to retort.
But it will matter because then the guy one-ups him. And I love... This is what I do miss about modern sci-fi, is the cheesy cold open ending, where the ending of the cold open here is Jakar just reacting with a shocked face and the camera zooming in and the music swelling.
Oh, the 90s were a hell of a time, weren't they?
Yeah. Julian, what do you think of the opening credits to Babylon 5?
I will admit that when the skip intro thing comes on, I hit it because they are far too long, but they are 100% a product of the 90s when that was like so many other opening credits, but these kind of just go on and on and on. So,
but Michael O'Hare's voice telling you it's a dream given form.
Yeah. All in however many tons of steel living together.
250,000 humans and aliens alike.
Yeah. On tons of steel. Trying to survive, or however it goes.
All alone in the night.
On Babylon 5.
It could be a day. My favorite, I noticed this time round, which is he has like a list of people that come to Babylon 5, all of which are pretty accurate. Like, you have these ambassadors and diplomats and blah, blah, blah. Wanderers. My favorite is entrepreneurs, and then it's a close-up shot of the big bug gangster guy.
Yes. Yeah.
It's
like, really? That guy's an entrepreneur? Come on.
What do you think, Julian, of the makeup stuff in this show?
It's incredible, right? Like it is so good. If there's one thing to say about this show, they did not, and maybe I'm wrong about this. Again, I don't know much about Babylon 5, but it seems like they put a lot of the budget into the makeup. I mean, just look at Jakar. It's outstanding. It's fantastic. I mean, some of the aliens and some of the races, like I'm guessing when I say this, it kind of means more of like the B and C, characters that you see around the station are maybe like a little cheesy, but other than that, I mean, most of them are just fantastic.
Yeah, like Jakar in this episode, we see him with his gloves off for like the first time, and we see his chest. Rarely in these sci-fi shows with this amount of prosthetics are they even going to bother with that. And here it's done in a very quick shot of him just laying down, turning over and seeing a flower and screaming. But I love the attention to detail with the makeup here. And I love it's not Star Trek makeup where they're like, one of our series regulars, their makeup is they have some bumps on their nose.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's funny you mentioned that though, right? Because like I feel like Babylon 5, if it wasn't the 90s and they, were maybe willing to take like a little bit more risk, like this show could have been a whole alien cast and been fantastic. Yeah. I always feel in the first few episodes of the show that I've watched that the stars are really the alien races and the humans are kind of like, I wouldn't say on the back burner. They're more secondary to the alien characters. Like they really get front row and center in Babylon 5.
Yeah, because also we are familiar as humans what humans are like, and this show presents humans as being similar to what we know them to be. We still have homelessness, we still have bigotry, we still have all the failings of humanity and also the successes of humanity in this. Unlike in Star Trek, where Star Trek, they have to really let you know that this is kind of, we're the bettering versions of ourselves. We don't have money and all of this stuff. And we don't have this. They have to really hammer down for us, the audience, the human side of the story being different to where we are currently when we're watching the show. While Babylon 5, it's like, it's kind of the same. They still have newspapers. Apparently the Dodgers are still a baseball team.
Yeah.
But who are the non?
If he wanted the best, he would have gone to the Assassin's Guild to get a killer. It is a tradition with the Thentamakor to leave a black flower near his victim as a warning so they can get their affairs in order. Have you received a death blossom?
No.
Then I wouldn't worry. Get some sleep, Ambassador. I'm sure the question will resolve itself soon enough.
But we get introduced to Natoth, his new aide, which is interesting because 2 episodes earlier he had his aide. And
right, I was going to ask about that. So, different aides, right?
The new aide story background is the actress who played the original aide could not handle the makeup. It was too much. She did not want to come back. If you actually watch Born to the Purple, she doesn't even have the red contact lenses in. She couldn't handle the contact lenses. So they just wrote her character out and replaced her with Natoth. Since it's early enough in the show, you can do that. And you can make Natoth a new character or
and
basically
they make a point
any character.
Of it in this. Apparently the previous aide had an airlock incident.
And died.
That's right.
Thus to throw more suspicion on Natoth, who I think that Natoth is great. I love the actress who plays Natoth because she matches Andreas Katsoulis' energy as a Nan. She also has this very, snooty, but also overtly sexual and kind of charged performance, and,
she's scathing.
Oh, yeah, even though she doesn't have eyebrows, you can tell that she's always raising an eyebrow.
or glaring with them, right? Like attack eyebrows.
Yeah, but she has nothing. And that previous actress didn't do a bad job, but some people can handle the makeup, and then there are those who can act with the makeup. As we all know, having watched Star Trek Discovery, you have Doug Jones there every week showing you what it's like for somebody to be in that makeup and be able to still act. And there are some actors in Star Trek Discovery, like the guy who plays Ash Tyler, for instance, when he's in the thick makeup, you could really tell that this is somebody who doesn't know how to do this makeup, or the makeup isn't benefiting them. But here, Natoth, I love also the spots on her head. There's a vacantness in the brow that kind of forms an arrow to point down at her eyes, just kind of emphasizing her eyes. And I think the actress who's delivering this is so good that I'm happy that she wasn't the assassin at the end because I wanted her to stick around. What did you think of Natoth, Julian? They introduce her in this episode. They're like, you should care about her.
Yeah, I'm really happy, like you said, that she wasn't the assassin, because I'm like, when she was talking with the assassin, like, oh yeah, I'm the other guild member. They sent me, and he's like, well, they didn't tell me. It's like, that's the whole point. I was like, oh, please don't do the typical, like, oh, it's the second, and obviously it wasn't, and she double crossed him, or it's not really a double cross, right? Because she was always, yeah, exactly, the good old triple cross. Yeah, she was fantastic. I liked that scene. She made it believable. Going back to the makeup conversation, like you just said, like, you know, even though they're called the non, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like even though she's one of them, she still looks very different from Jakar, and they do such a good job with the makeup, and she was fantastic. I think it's funny that I was thinking about this before we started recording. I'm like, he definitely had a different aide, and this is another new aide, but it's also believable. It's believable for Jakar to have another new aide, because he's kind of like one of the people that would probably like fire an aide if they did like one thing wrong, like put a fork in the wrong location. So,
and he tries to ship her out immediately in this episode.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and he didn't want an aide in the first place. Like, he wasn't when the first one turns out before.
When he's at the strip joint and he's like, oh shit.
Before
that's right. And he spits the drink out.
They
so
throw
good.
before the dude gets thrown in the table.
Yeah,
I wasn't expecting you for years, days.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I love the back and forth between Jakar and Natoth, because she's treating the whole situation kind of lightly. She's just like, look, if I was really the killer, I would have killed you already. And then he's like, and then he explains the situation, and she's just like, that sounds stupid. Like, she's acknowledging, like, this plot sounds contrived and forced, but whatever. And I love the contrast between...
Yeah, I'll deal with it.
Yeah, you get the contrast between the two characters, but you also get the unifying factor of them still being Nans. So she doesn't treat it that seriously. He treats it very seriously. She gives him the advice that he needs to pursue to save his own life. It doesn't work. And then at the end, she saves the day, and they both formulate a plan to fuck over the real assassin, and they both, like, lock arms together and walk down the corridor being like, we did the plot. It was really fun for us in the end. Like, Sinclair's like, hey, guys, did you enjoy your plot today? And they're like, going great. Which is... wonderful stuff. And yeah, Natoth, that actress, like I said, I think she matches Andreas Katsoulis' energy, because he is so above everyone else except for Londo. Londo and Jakar, like the most high energy performers in the show. And now you got Natoth there. And we were talking just briefly, Julian said a little while back that the thing that drags this episode down is the Sinclair plot, for instance, the love stuff. And I think it's because everyone in the religious ceremonies and the Jakar plot are playing it up to 11. They're playing it very high energy, while the Sinclair plot, they're playing it at very low energy. Very low, very calm, quiet. And I do think...
all about the subtext that is very much text, which makes it weird.
Yeah.
Half the time I'm with someone else, or you're with someone else.
The other half, the dance goes something like this. We meet, renew acquaintances, talk about old times at the academy. You ask about my aunt, I ask about your brother. We lie about not missing each other, and we end up in bed together. And then you leave.
Or you leave. Last time it was you.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, it was.
No. Was it?
From a writing perspective, I get why that is like that, because I think the idea is we can't have the episode be fully off the chain the whole time. We still need to have like some slow moments, some more grounded moments. We can't have it be a complete farce of an episode. But it does mean like every time we're away from Jakar, because let's be real, is the Jakar assassin plot really that interesting of a plot, or is it just because it's with a fun character?
Ooh, that's a...
Because did you actually care who the assassin was? And once it was revealed, did it matter?
No.
I cared that he wore glasses without having ears.
Yes, the glasses were so stupid yet so good. It immediately brought me back to Picard with stupid Commodore O and her
sunglasses.
Men in Black sunglasses.
Yeah.
Like, oh God.
But seriously, is is this assassin because it's treated like a mystery plot? Is this plot really that good, or is it just you are with a very fun character and it doesn't matter?
No, it's not a very good plot, right? But this is kind of like your very atypical season 1 of a new television show. There's a formula, right? Like there's got to be like, hey, we need supplies. Oh, there's a terrorist threat. Oh, there's an assassination. Oh, and then, sometimes not. There's, this religious thing that we have to go to. This was the assassination episode. And yes, it mainly works because Jakar is so good. But yeah, again, it's that atypical, here's the season 1, we're going to get through this first season formula type episode.
Yeah, and we've got to give Jakar an episode. We've just got to give him an episode, but we don't want it to be like depressing, like Londo's episode kind of was, where it's like Londo's one was like kind of sad, because Londo's sad, while Jakar, he's angry. But I like in this, they made it, instead of he's angry, he's afraid. The whole episode, he's afraid. One of the background gags, Julian, I don't know if you noticed this, but one of the background gags is during the Mbryo religious festival where they all eat the little fruits. In the background of a shot, you see Jakar's gloved hand switch fruits with, I think, Ivonova, because he's so really paranoid about being poisoned.
That's really funny.
It's a little you attention to details like that. But go on.
No, you mentioned how, like, Jakar, plays this off as kind of like being scared, and it's a little bit funny, right? It actually kind of reminded me anytime, like, Odo was after Quark in DS9, or there was somebody after Quark on DS9, and, like, he would formulate all these different ways on how he was going to get out on top, and of course he never does, and Odo ends up throwing him in the brig. But, like, this was very much like that, right?
But he got to get away with it and win. Rachel, what about this, for instance? We are rewatching this, but I'm curious to get your perspective anyway. Jakar is presented as somebody who's done something so heinous that somebody within his own government is wanting to kill him. And when we are the closest we get to whatever it is, he says, if these things get out, it will weaken my position in the negotiations. And he's like, I actually don't give a shit if these things come out. We are presented with Jakar as this filthy, gross character. Like he fucks human women. He doesn't give a shit about peace. He doesn't like Garibaldi very much. He's got someone trying to kill him. All of these things you would say are unlikable. Like, this is an unlikable character. Yet, it seems like everybody here likes him. Why is that? How does this overcome those barriers? Because, in another show, those things we could would say, oh yeah, this character's like a bad guy. He's filthy. We don't like him. Look at all these things. Like, this whole episode's about him being murdered because he did something heinous.
Yeah. It's the performance.
Is it just the performance?
Like, that is the main thing, is the performance and how charismatic Andreas is, and also how he does that through the prosthetics as well.
Yeah.
I think that's the main thing that brings it up.
I think, like Julian said about Quark, I think he's also presented like a boob in this episode. Like, Jakar's an idiot. Jakar's a dum-dum. He's very silly. And I think that makes it, again, a likability is there because Jakar is yucking it up. But it also shows you at the end that, no, this is like a serious, like, cold-blooded, four-dimensional chess-thinking guy. Like, at the end, he lets this assassin guy pretty much get assassinated himself. And he's like, doesn't matter to me, bye-bye.
He spends a lot of money, apparently, to make sure that happens.
Yeah.
But then I was also thinking, like, is that even true?
Oh, I think so. I think Jakar's willing enough to do that.
Yeah.
What do you think about that, Julian? Especially you're the newcomer here. We have all these unlikable qualities, and we don't even get an actual answer of why Jakar's getting assassinated. We just get hints of why. Like, obviously he's done something shitty and gross and disgusting enough to warrant somebody within his own government wanting to kill him. But we still all like him. What is it about that works for you? Like, how does he overcome these negative qualities to the point of still being a likable main character?
I think it comes down to what Rachel said. The performance is definitely one thing. Like he's just so good as an actor, and then the characters, himself is just played so over the top that you can't help but like him. I've already compared him to Quark, and I'll compare him to another character. It's not quite the same, but I think of it immediately, and that's Gaius Baltar on the Battlestar reboot. Like, he is one of the main causes of the fall of humanity, right? But you can't help but have, like, one, you feel a little sorry for him. Two, he has some great character moments on Battlestar. And James Callis is just such an amazing actor and does such a good job in that role that you can't help but like him as one of the main characters in the show, even though, he is in essence a bad guy, right? Not so much near the end of the series, but definitely at the beginning.
Yeah, I think it's all there. I want to talk about the framing structure of this episode, which is the religious ceremony and festival. I love this because it doesn't actually matter to the plot. It doesn't really contribute anything majorly. It's just like set pieces.
Yeah, and the through line.
And it's a through line, but it's like, I wouldn't say that this episode's majorly about religion.
No.
But what I like about it is it's engaging in a very unique way where, okay, for instance, since we talk about Star Trek a lot, there's an episode of Star Trek Next Generation I love, the episode Sarek, where Sarek turns up on the ship, and the framing device is he has to do some negotiations with some aliens that we never really get to meet or care about, and it's like, that's there to be just the motivating factor for the plot to happen. And that's what this religious ceremony is. It's there, it's to help guide us from scene to scene to scene, but it's striking and very memorable. You remember every single religious ceremony and festival that happens within the episode because they tell you so much about the given characters and their race. And we are so used to a lot of these sci-fi shows being very atheist in their approach, or very agnostic, or very on religion. So we also remember this religious plot a lot more fondly in our brains because it still, even in today's standards of science fiction, still feels novel. Which I think is interesting. Julian, we were talking a bit before about how weird Star Trek's relationship is with religion. Even in modern Star Trek, its religious relationship is a little weird and all over the place. What did you think of the pitch of this episode being the religious ceremonies, and what did you think of these ceremonies?
I mean, I'll be the first person to say that I have a very love-hate relationship with religion. I was raised Jewish. I was bar mitzvahed, but I don't love religion, so I like to question it a lot. So I've always respected and loved that Star Trek was like religion, pretty much like, maybe it still exists, but we don't really talk about it. We don't flaunt it. If you believe in this, you believe in this. I think Owo on Discovery talks about her religion a little bit. I think Pike is a little bit religious. His father was a pastor. So they're talking about it a little bit more in current Trek. And I've always respected that they kind of put it on the back burner. But having said that, when you have a show like Babylon 5 and you do have that's centered on all these, when it's centered on all these different alien races, and they're the main characters of the show, you have to do an episode like this. And it was beautiful. It was really well done from the dinner. And I'm sorry, I still don't know the alien race with they have the bald heads and the really
Centauri.
Cool, the Centauri. That was really cool. And I really had a moment when I think it was her aide was coming to help her out, and she was like, look at me, and he wouldn't. She's like, listen, you need to look up at me. It's really okay. All those little nonsense about their society and how things work, and then at the very end, right, when there's hundreds of people from Earth, Catholicism, Buddhism, Judaism
starts with an atheist.
Yeah, exactly. So I thought it was actually handled beautifully. It was really well done. Yeah. And
just to clarify, I think he was talking about the Minbari, who are the Minbari people. Yes. And yes. I like just to...
I was thinking of the female Centauri.
The Centauri are bold, and Londo's kind of balding with his big hair.
Yeah, no, that's the other ones. Sorry.
Let's talk about the Minbari for a second there. I agree. I love Lanier always looking down, and she makes that little quip where it's just like, I can't have an aide that's always looking at his feet. You'll stumble into things and everything like that. And they have this nice, tender relationship, but then she reminds us, oh, no. I'm your fucking boss.
Yeah.
You do not call me Satai Delenn here. If you do, I'll be very disappointed in you. And it reminds us constantly throughout the show that Delenn seems like the nice alien. She seems like the friendly one, but every time we get a little bit of a peek behind the curtain, there's something up with her. She's hiding something. She clearly has this history or something going on with Commander Sinclair's war story. She's obviously knowing what's happening in some way, shape, or form, but we, the audience, don't know, nor do the characters. And every time you're thinking, okay, something's happening here with Delenn that's nice, and then someone will come in and say something, like, for instance, their religious ceremony seems like the most, solemn, traditionalist type of ceremony, lots of bells, lots of
instruments,
they have robes and stuff, and she's eating the fruit, and it's very sexually charged. At least that's how I felt when she ate her fruit looking at Sinclair. And then you find out at the end of the episode, it's like, if someone took this seriously, that doubles as a marriage ceremony. And it's like, oh, even their religious ceremonies has another level to it. Like there's a duplicity in their religious ceremonies because they never presented it like that. And I love when Lanier's just like, are you hiding the fact that you're Satai? And she's just like, I'm not hiding anything. I'm just like abstaining from telling people.
Yeah, I'm not denying it.
Anything. I'm just not telling anyone.
It would bring up questions that I'm not willing to answer. And it's interesting to compare that to the way that Jakar, when he's threatened with, like, his skeletons coming out of his closet, and he's like, oh, I don't care, but it would fuck up this other thing, and I do kind of care about that. I mean, Delenn's just like, don't you dare.
I've built this elaborate house of cards. People trust me, okay? Don't you fucking ruin this for me. I think the Centauri religious ceremony is everyone's favorite. Would you agree, Julian? I mean, that's the one you kind of bring up, the way they just drink and eat. I mean, and just celebrate
he was
genocide.
Out, right? Like, he just passed the fuck out.
Yeah.
It was beautiful. It was like, if I was going to have... Okay, actually, I will say, as somewhat not so much during pandemic times, but we've been having a yearly Passover Seder. And basically you eat a shit ton of food and you drink a lot of wine. Like you just drink red wine the whole night. So yeah, I mean, it's not, unheard of to pass out at the dinner table, during a religious ceremony. It happens. Yeah. So I loved it. I loved it.
The Centauri festival reinforces this thing that we know about them too. Isn't that right, Rachel? Which is they are imperialist bastards who commit genocides all over the place, but they treat it like this joyous thing. Like, we completely killed a race of people. Yay! Did you know what the last one of them said? Ah! And then they all start laughing, and we're all like having a good chuckle about it. But it's like a really fucking dark, depressing, underlying thing, and it obviously evokes a lot of celebrations a lot of our own nations have. I mean, when you guys have Thanksgiving, obviously over in America, there's obviously a lot of heated stuff about like the whole entire thing of Americans coming over and taking the land, and we have the same with Australia Day as well, which is now being more coined as Invasion Day. And so there's that thing where you politely chuckle at the fact, because Londo's funny. He's a very outright funny guy. He's telling us about how they need a god for every occasion.
And he's stunning in purple.
And
Garibaldi
Who's not
cute
stunning in purple, though?
and Garibaldi's cute in an annoying sort of way. But I like that it still ties into a lot of real-world religious and cultural celebrations without being exact one-to-one like Star Trek is. Like, the Centauri feel like they represent, like, a lot of different cultures. Like, they feel very Napoleonic. They feel very Roman. They feel very, like, a lot of different things. And, like, yeah, like I just said, like, when I watch it, I think of, like, that celebration being reminiscent to Thanksgiving or Australia Day, where you big and party and celebrate the founding of whatever, but it's like the founding is on blood.
Yeah. They generally are founded on blood. That's the gist of it.
Yeah, and I was talking to a friend of mine, and he said, like, what threw him off in the scene is Ivanova is happy for the first time in the show. She's just, like, wasted.
Yeah.
Oh, right, yeah. You never see her smile for the first 4 or 5 episodes, and then all of a sudden she's, like, wasted having the time of her life.
Mm-hmm.
And it's fun because, you know, she's there to serve, too, as the character that says, hey, Londo, tell me exposition. Hey, Londo, tell me what your religion is. And I do love hearing about their religions, where it's just like, it says so much more about the Centauri of like, they're not even really that religious. It's just like, again, an appearance thing of like so many problems that we just had to add another god to each problem that we have, because why not?
Gods by the pound.
Gods by the bushel. A god for all occasions.
Londo, tell me, what are all these statues?
Our household gods. In a world where every day is a struggle for survival, you need all the gods you can get.
Sinclair is grappling throughout the whole episode of what the Earth's dominant belief system is, and what did you think of that, Julian, when it's like revealed at the end Sinclair's solution to that?
Like I said, I thought it was really well done. I mean, because you're talking about Earth. I mean, speaking of adding a god for everything, there we have so many religions on this planet. So it was a good idea not to just show, you know, one thing in a ballroom or, you know, 2 or 3 different things to really get the point across, just lining up an amazing, diverse group of people. I thought it was really cool.
Yeah, and some people don't like this because I think the complaint is it stacks the deck of showing that all the other alien races in the show are monotheistic. They only have one religion. Right. Only one. And the humans are somehow better because we have multiple religions, which I understand that critique. It's understandable. I think, like, with the Minbari, there's a whole fucking season's worth of episodes about why their religion is the way it is, and basically it's a manufactured religion, so that makes sense to me. The Centauri, I can kind of agree. The fact that they are religious is kind of interesting to me in any way because they're just so decadent that I don't actually see them celebrating any real religions.
But then that's where the Roman things come in of, like, the Romans
have a god for this, have a god for that.
And they assimilated the religions of places that they went into and were like, oh, this sounds good. Oh, we'll use this with this thing that we got from over here, and then we'll turn this into this thing. And, like, you know, we've been talking with the Greeks a little bit more, so we have that god, but we'll take that god, but we'll rename that one, but not that one.
Yeah, and later in the show, like within this season, like a few episodes later, the Narn actually do have a religious ceremony. They just hold it on the day where it actually happens. And we actually do learn at least the Narn have multiple religions because Natoth and Jakar don't celebrate the same religious figure. And she basically chastises him before that. She's like, well, mine's better, which is an interesting approach. But yeah, I love this ending too because when I watch it, it still feels fresh and it feels like it's not just what the show's doing, but it feels like it's a clever approach on Sinclair's part as a character, and it feels like only Sinclair would think of that because Sinclair's the only real character in the show who 100% believes in the mission statement of Babylon 5. He's always actively trying to bestow the lessons and the morals and the mission of Babylon 5 when everyone else is all involved in their own politics or their own assassination plots or their own I've fallen in love with a dancer plot. Sinclair is always just trying to get the negotiations done, always just trying to get peace underway, which makes his plot in this episode rather interesting because he's kind of not really interested in participating in the religious ceremonies because, well, Catherine's back on the ship.
Yeah, it's like he's got other priorities, you know? It's, you know, got to be a little lonely for the man on board a space station. So.
Yeah, I mean, in the first pilot movie, he had a girlfriend who bought him frictionless sheets. So, you know, he's got to use those sheets again.
He does.
Rachel, this is the weakest part of the episode. Sinclair, Catherine Sakai, you were watching it last night and you said, like, this just drags. And you, when she was acting, you were like, is she not good or is this writing not very good?
Yeah.
Where do you fall on it now?
I think that it's a mix of both. I definitely don't think that this is a strong point of the writer himself, and like the series director is not very good at doing romantic scenes.
No, I don't think so.
Developing romantic tension, he does better. But the scene with them in the restaurant and then in the quarters just feels so oddly stilted. Like, in some ways, I would think it would have been better if they fucked first and then went.
I struggle because I like a lot of what's being put down here, and I really like the maturity of their relationship. Like, it doesn't feel like...
The idea is good.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like a lot of the old typical standards we see in these shows of the old lover comes on the ship and they cause a fuss. Catherine doesn't really cause a major fuss. She understands that he's got a job. She's not, like, angry at him for being a busy man because she's a busy woman. I like that they both feel like they have real lives and, like, that they do come into one another's orbit and they just can't help but be fascinated with each other. I like Sinclair. I like seeing a vulnerable side to him that isn't like I'm a war veteran. I like seeing him get flustered up by the fact that there's somebody he's got a crush on. I like seeing the commander of the ship, the stoic commander of the ship, kind of blush at the notion that a woman he likes is on board. I like it gives him a warmth and a layer there, and out of the two of them, I thought he was the better actor in their romantic scenes. I thought he had a lot more of a genuine
100%
feeling between the two of them. Like, I felt like he really did feel these things for her, while I felt like she was memorizing a script a little bit more.
That kind of jilted jaggediness of... and it's just like, no, this really shouldn't feel rehearsed in the way that it's feeling, because that's the way that it comes off with, like, she's pausing at these points when she's like trying to figure out what are the right words, what do I want to say, what am I willing to give in this moment to show how vulnerable I'm feeling, how vulnerable am I willing to look. But it just feels like she's going, okay, like, word, pause, word,
pause. And I don't want to give this actress a bad going over, because there are moments where you can tell why they hired her. I think it's just warming up to the script and the character for her, because there's that line she delivers where she says, don't touch me unless you mean it. And it felt like she really nailed that line. Like, that was the one where, and that's near the end of the story, so she's warmed up to there. We've warmed up to her. I think also we already know Sinclair, so we are naturally predispositioned to like him and or understand his mental state. And also, they build her up via Sinclair. Like, we see Michael Garibaldi see her and then warn Jeff about her, and then we see him react, and then we see him go after Catherine, and she's like in a business meeting where she just made like a shit ton of money.
Yeah.
And that stuff, good, but then once we actually get to sit down with her, again, I like the idea of we're not going to do the typical romance plots of these shows. Like, we aren't going to reminisce about the academy and talk about old friends and then fall into love and bed and whatever like they usually do. I like that they try to do that, but I don't know, it's just very cheesy and corny. I think the acting's stiff. I think the music's too overwrought. I also just don't think that she's that compelling of a person, especially in, I know, Julian, you didn't like the pilot movie, but I thought his girlfriend in that, Carolyn, I thought she was a far more compelling character.
Oh, bar none. Yeah, I mean, so much better than this one, for sure.
So what about this stuff, like with this Sinclair side of things, does and doesn't work for you? And what do you think about our lead man, Sinclair?
Well, one, I really like Sinclair. I like that he's no bullshit, right? Like he just, like you said, you guys both said, like he just gets right to the point. He's always the guy at the front of the line. He's the guy in the ship, you know, trying to get it to like not hit Babylon 5. You know, he isn't willing, or he isn't willing to do anything that like his, you know, that he would ask his crew to do, right? Like he goes and does it. So I really like him. My biggest takeaway from this whole relationship thing, I knew that it was going to be really weird when, did you guys see the original, I think it was 1989 Batman movie?
Yeah.
And Bruce and Vicky Vale are at literally the largest dinner table in the entire world, and they have to like get up to pass the salt. This gets the record for smallest dinner table in a television show ever. Like I wasn't quite sure where they were going to put the food down when I was watching this.
Because it does, they say like, oh, David is going to be your server. And it's like, wait, so that's their table?
Yeah.
This isn't the bar. This is like,
this
isn't the waiting room.
Restaurant.
This is the fanciest restaurant of Babylon 5.
Dude, I don't want to know what like the fast food looks like. Do you just have to like put your foot up on a stool and like quickly like eat up? Or
well, the Zocalo doesn't have any tables.
No, they just have a seat at the bar.
Yeah.
Like the business area where like she's doing her deal and we see numerous other people throughout the show doing deals just has like those high-rise tables, no seating.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think what makes this plot less interesting too, and because we've all grown up with these sci-fi shows and these 90s shows, it's a very obvious, very cheap, very easy way of manipulating the audience to care about the character. Mm-hmm. Like, here's an old lover that's come on this ship. You should care now because this old lover has a pre-built reason to matter to the main character. Instead of us watching them matter to the main character, we just have to assume that they do because they knew them from the academy, or they used to be lovers, or they used to be engaged, or whatever it is. And rarely, if ever, these type of plots fun in shows. Like, heck, in Star Trek The Next Generation, that's Troy and Riker's relationship at the very beginning, and it's the least interesting stuff about those two characters.
Yeah. But in all seriousness, the biggest problem with this is that it is the B plot, and it's also the B plot to a very strong, or I guess we should say strongly led A plot. So it's already suffering because of that.
Oh, yes. Happily, I'm safe because the commission was yours alone, and they're so scandalized by your actions that they just as soon forget the whole thing ever happened.
Except for the part about killing him.
Except for that, yes.
I think that's it.
Time for the spotlight.
Time for the actor's spotlight, the part of the show in which we highlight an actor that turned up here and talk about what we thought about them in the given episode and what we've seen them in before and all of that good stuff. Rachel, who is the actor we're shining the light on for this one?
Thomas Kabachi.
Is that how we pronounce his name?
Don't know.
It's a weird last name, but forgive us if we...
Kabachi, sure.
Let's call it a day.
He's English.
He's English?
Yeah, he was born in Manchester.
Oh, in UK or in America? I don't know. He was in this episode as who? He was the assassin Tapari, which sounds like a nice cuisine, I would get.
Yes.
I would eat it, yeah.
Would you like some Tapari?
He was the iconic assassin who wore glasses without having ears.
Can we talk about that? Can we talk about that more? I know we briefly touched upon it, but that is one of the best dumb things ever. I don't know whose idea it was to give this guy glasses. They don't have ears. External ears.
Like, has little ridges that they're sitting on.
It's
so odd.
He takes them off, and then he has to put them back on, but he has to like really struggle because his head's also bigger because of the makeup on it.
Yeah.
Like he has to remember, oh yeah, my glasses go bigger than my actual head.
The best part about it even more is too, it's like they're very clearly like Earth glasses, right?
Yeah.
They're not like, special like sci-fi non-glasses. Like they're straight up glasses.
They're just like weird, like octagon-y kind of shape, because they're not just circular.
But
it's just like, why?
You know what I'll give it though?
Like, did you just want to make him look like? Did you think that that made him look nerdy, and then that's why he's sticking to the rules of the Assassin Guild.
I'll tell you what it is. It's to give the actor a personality to play with. And what I mean by that is, like, actors sometimes like their little props or costumes or something or other to give them that little extra oomph. And you can tell that this guy really worked with those glasses because it made his character, like, really snobby. When he put them on, he was just like, I'm really enjoying myself here. And I want to really say this guy did a great job because he had to do something very important. Another actor could have fallen on their face, which is he had to be low energy to begin with. But when the time came, he rose to the level of the other two Narns in the plot. So he rose to the energy of 11 when it was called for. Like when we reveal that he's the killer and he's got this big cheesy grin and he's holding up this goofy sci-fi ray gun, it made me laugh.
And there's a pause with a ray gun too. It's like the weirdest ray gun in the world.
But immediately when he had that smile and he had the big goofy grin and the glasses, it gave me a character. I understood who he was. I was like, oh, this guy enjoys his job. It's basic, it's minimal, but that's all you need for this character in the plot. We're not going to need like a 15-episode arc to describe this guy.
Not needed.
He's just a prick. What did you think of him, Rachel?
I agree. I think that he does a good job at trying to get on the same level as Jakar and the other Narn, but I don't think he gets there.
You don't?
I don't think he does.
Oh, I don't know. He really relishes the lines about giving him like pain and death and fear. Yeah, he really chews into those.
Okay, well, they're at 11, and I think he gets to a 10.
Fair enough. What do you think, Julian, about this guy here? He was the big
Rachel's
mystery
right,
reveal.
though, right? Yeah, like Rachel's right though, right? Because he is a 10, and I think he has to be a 10 instead of an 11, right? Because Jakar is the 11, and you can't have two 11s in the room like that. He plays the role that he needs to play, and the whole thing about like, crying out if he wants to and just like not giving it, and then Jakar with like non-satisfaction is great. But the best part of his whole role isn't even when he's talking. Like I said, like his facial expressions are amazing. And again, that's behind a lot of makeup.
Yeah.
It's so good. And then like, we're never going to forget the glasses. No one's ever going to forget that.
We're not going to let anybody forget about the glasses.
So it's already a memorable role.
Yeah, it's got that memorable thing. Even if it's goofy, it's memorable because there are some character moments or little things in Battlestar or Space Above and Beyond or Star Trek or this, where there's this little goofy quality to a character, and I'll remember them for decades to come, in comparison to some modern prestige television shows in which they put so much emphasis on a lot of these characters. I could not tell you about so many characters from Game of Thrones, but I could tell you about Tapari. He wore glasses because they were stupid.
Yeah, and that's the thing too, right? Like that's the thing too. Like Commodore O, horrible villain in Picard, right? Like she was not good, but no one's ever going to forget her because she wore sunglasses. Like that, you're never going to forget her.
I'll never forget. We named our show Yum Yum because Narn has barely any character, but when she said Yum Yum, it raised her above where she was. It made her like
Best thing ever.
This entity of status that is unforgettable. And Tapari here, like, the guy, I also love, you said it, his facial expressions. That final scene where he's in the, in the docking bay or whatever it is, and they're telling him what they've done to him.
Yeah, the departure.
His whole journey of like, I've just woken up, what's happening? Days, you say? Wait, money? Oh God, they're gonna kill me. Nailed it. That guy fucking nailed it.
Yeah.
And,
I think that was his best scene.
That was his great scene. I also like that he chided Natoth for being late to pick him up at the docking thing. He was like, you know how long I had to wait for her to find me? It was like a long time. Which is neat, because when you actually watch the scene when Natoth finds him, she's like, oh, I've been trying to find you for an hour. So it's like for an hour he's been waiting there.
I'm an hour late.
I'm an hour late finding you. So he's just been chilling out. And I like that he also, because of the dialogue, we introduced that he does not like this murder plot. He would rather just kill him.
He just wants to be done with it.
He's like, this elaborate bullshit. Like, do you know how much time I've wasted here? I've just had to be chilling out on Babylon 5. I don't give a shit about Babylon 5.
I think you would get like the same answer from most assassins, right? Like they really just want to get the killing done, but then you get a client who's like, you need to like lead them on, and you need to like make it like a ruse, and you have to like do like the triple cross and all this shit. And he's like, can I just put a bullet in his head? Like, can we just get this done? I just need my money, please. Like,
so Rachel, what have been some things that people may know him, and do you know him from anything? Because I gave him a look. He's in a lot of Star Trek. This guy,
yes,
a lot of Star Trek.
That's the natural place to start.
His memorable role for me in Star Trek is he's the evil Romulan in the episode where Geordi and Ensign Ro phase, and they're like walking through and they're invisible and they can walk through things, and the reveal is there's a Romulan that can do that too, and I think he's that Romulan. And that's cool. I like, oh, I remember you. You die horribly.
Yeah.
in next.
He does die very horribly. That's a great episode of Star Trek.
That's one of those sci-fi concepts that lives up to its potential. And yeah, he is one of the more memorable deaths in TNG. Definitely. Like that's
and
one of the memorable
back
ones.
For a TNG movie.
Of course he does.
Yep.
He's in Generations.
The best movie. No, it's no Star Trek 5. Julian, what about you? You obviously have gone through his IMDb. You've seen him in some stuff, some Star Trek, obviously. Any kind of notable things for you?
Mostly just the Star Trek, and you kind of took mine, Ryan, but I'll allow it. No, I'm kidding. Mbryo in the next phase, he's so good. But then the one that we talked about off mic is he's Kira's dad on DS9, which is like a huge deal, right?
Yeah, can you remind me? It's been a little while since I've watched Deep Space Nine. He's only in 2 episodes. What was his whole deal? Like, I can't off the top of my head remember Major Kira's dad. I still need to rewatch DS9 from the perspective of wanting to like Major Kira, because when I watched it as a kid, I'm just like, I don't give a shit about Major Kira. She's always complaining.
But it's been a while for me too, but I think that if I'm not mistaken, and I will probably end up being wrong, I think that they did not have a very good history. If I'm not mistaken, yeah, who would have guessed? It's Bajorans, yeah. Yeah, but it's a big deal because obviously, like, Kira's one of the main characters of DS9, and he gets talked about a lot. And I don't think he shows up until like what season is it? It's
pretty late in the game.
I just had it. I think it is pretty late in the game. So, and the episodes are Ties of Blood and Water and Wrongs Darker Than Death. Do something. Wrongs Darker Than Death or Night. So
wow.
that kind of tells you, right?
Oh, it sounds like they have a beautiful tight
family.
Oh,
that's the thing too, right? It's actually more about Kira's mother, because these are the episodes where Dukat tells Kira that his
could be
mom,
your dad.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of the best Star Trek cold opens ever. Gul Dukat phoning her up and being like, "Yeah, I fucked your mom. Bye."
I will never. If you can get one thing to give me the heebie-jeebies, and I'm sure you guys will agree, it's the weird like Gul Dukat lusting over Major Kira.
Oh, yes, but I love it ever so much as well, because it gives Mark Lamo plenty to play with as an actor and a real person.
He's also the train conductor in the Emergence episode of TNG with like the weird like shape thing, and they had to like go in the holodeck, and it's on a train, and I don't remember much about that episode other than it being really fucking weird. Yeah.
Rachel, you said you had some interesting trivia about him last night. You were like perked up, being like, "Oh, now this is fun."
Well, I do want to acknowledge that he's also in Voyager and Enterprise.
Mm-hmm.
But I have two things that I find really fun. So he was born in 1945.
Okay.
He currently has 138 credits.
Busy guy.
His first credit was in 1983, so he was 38 when he got his first credit.
Oh, that's cool.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And since he plays, for the majority of what we've seen, people in prosthetics, we can't tell how old he is anymore.
No.
Like, I couldn't tell you how old Tapari is supposed to be. Is he younger, older than Jakar? I could not tell you.
So the glass is just a genetic
the
thing or an
make
age
him an
thing?
elderly man. It's because he's allergic
let's say
to
50s.
retinox. Yeah.
But
retinox 4, right?
Yeah.
The credit that I just cracked up. I cracked up. Just like last week we got Dogs.
Yes, an actor was in a film called Dogs.
Where killer dogs attack.
Oh, is this guy in a monster movie?
No, he's not. He's in the TV show Joan of Arcadia.
Oh, okay.
Do you remember that show?
I kind of do, but it's not ringing major bells for me.
Julian, do you remember?
Do you remember Joan of Arcadia, Julian?
I recognize the name.
Yeah, it's one of those.
It's the one where a teenager...
Was that a bad Sci-Fi Channel show?
No. It's a teenager becomes like the reincarnation of Joan of Arc.
That's a plot.
But that's what the show is.
I would watch that.
she is from God.
I remember seeing the ads for that.
Oh, God.
Oh, God. But he plays Creepy Guy God.
Yes. Creepy Guy God, the best casting credit title to have on your thing. I will end this by saying he played Craig Feldspar's dad in Malcolm in the Middle. That's very important to note down. And I remember him vividly because the joke is Craig's dad is a fitness freak and he's always like in tight spandex outfits and he's like super fit. And Craig, of course, is not super fit. He's very overweight and nerdy and schlubby and his dad's very disappointed in him. And as soon as I saw he was in Malcolm in the Middle, I didn't even need to read the character name. I was instantly transported back to being a 15-year-old boy watching that episode and loving that actor.
I don't know if I have to turn in my nerd card or not, but I have never seen one single episode of Malcolm in the Middle.
Well, okay. Well, that's the end of the episode, people. We're very disappointed in Julian for not having seen it.
Vic Feldspar. Nice to meet you, boys. I'm this one's father, I guess. Father? Ha! You pretended not to know me at the father-son picnic. Sorry, I wasn't swelling with pride while I watched you suck the butter off other people's corn cobs. You wonder why I'm so messed up? It's because from the day I was born, I've heard nothing but 4-count burpees and constant lisping criticism.
What would you give this episode, Rachel? The Parliament of Dreams. A yum being bad or a yum being good?
Yum.
Yum yum.
I give it a yum as well.
Yum.
Yeah, there's a lot we could pick apart, and we already did. Like, the Sinclair stuff isn't that great.
Not perfect.
It's not
but
like
it's
the
good.
plots are great, but it's just an unapologetically fun time. And I think I miss a lot of these types of episodes in TV. I miss these type of episodes where it's like, we're not having to sit there on our podcast. I'm sure, Julian, you get sick of this too. When you're sitting there on your podcast and you've just watched an episode of something and you have to spend like this time being like, where's this all going to lead to? And like these deep things. Do you think that moment where Sinclair blinked to the left is actually foreshadowing for this reference or something? And it's just like, no, this episode's just Jakar running around, sometimes shirtless.
Trying not to die.
And then Sinclair has an old flame. And another thing to say about Catherine Sakai is she does subvert the old flame thing. She becomes a recurring character in season 1.
There you go.
So she gets to come back, unlike a lot of these old lovers in TV shows who are just like ones and dones and that's it.
Like John Luke's like had like 10 lovers and
how many admirals were former lovers?
Yeah, right.
Like the one in Measure of a Man.
Her, the JAG officer.
Yeah. So, Julian, what would you give this? Our rating, of course, being yum being bad and yum being good.
Yum.
Yum.
Yes, yum is here. I have to ask, what was your reaction to the yum line in Star Trek Discovery when it first happened?
I fucking loved it. Everything about it. It was so out of place,
yes,
and yet so stupidly good.
It was something to behold.
There's a very specific reason for this, and for whatever reason, when she said that, it took me back to me being a little kid watching my VHS on repeat of Star Trek VI: The Undiscovered Country when the Enterprise is getting shot to shit by General Chang. And Spock is like, gas. And they talk about how like they could make basically a homing torpedo. And Spock's like, Doctor, would you like to help me perform surgery on a torpedo? And he goes something along the lines of, oh, sounds interesting, or sounds like so much fun. And then, you know, Admiral Cornwall's like, let's go get this torpedo. And yeah, she's just like, yum, yum. Yeah, it was awesome. It was stupid, but it was amazing.
Yeah, it was George O was like, do you want to murder Leland?
Oh, yeah, that's right. You want to come? Yes, that was right. It was like, do you want to go murder Leland? Yes.
Yum, yum.
Amazing.
That's it, listening people out there. I hope you're enjoying the stuff. We are going to be hearing now from Rachel what we are going to be tackling next time on Babylon 5.
On the next Babylon 5.
The next episode is the 6th in season 1, entitled Mind War.
Mind War!
Sinclair's position on Cyclops is perfectly clear. Get out of my head, he orders. Who wrote this? But getting Bester, Walter Koenig.
Yeah, Chekhov.
And his fellow mind-reading officer of the station is another matter. They're on the thought trail of what they say is a rogue telepath with awesome telekinetic powers.
A rogue telepath with telepathic powers and telekinetic. And oh no, Chekhov's after him. Oh boy. That should be a fun time. I can't wait to become with that one. Julian, thank you so much for coming along and joining us for the B5 journey. And I hope that you continue to give B5 a chance and to watch it along. And yeah, like I said, you're over the hump that is the pilot movie, yes. And now you're pretty smooth sailing. There are going to be some bumps along the way. There's going to be an episode called TKO, which is terrible, but it also might be interesting to you because that episode is all about Ivanova being coming to her terms with the religion, which is obviously she's a Jew, so we get to have lots of Judaism in space.
Hey, yeah, thank you.
Jews in space.
For so much for having me. I'm glad that we finally made it work. I am going to keep giving Babylon 5 a chance because most of these episodes that I've watched have been pretty decent. So I'm gonna make my way through. This was a ton of fun.
Yeah, and where can people find you and your podcast and all that on the internet?
Yeah, so the easiest way to find our podcast, Strange New Pod, is just simply going to strangenewpod.com, and we're at Strange New Pod on Twitter. You can find me personally on Twitter at JulianB_315. I'm everywhere. Same thing on Instagram. So we're everywhere. Just go strangenewpod.com.
Yeah, and I'll make sure to put some of the links of that in the description of this episode. Make sure to follow these guys. They always having interesting discussions, really light and fun, lots of puns.
So many puns.
Not as many from you. You're the one who rolls the eyes at the puns. You're the straight man.
Yes, I press all the sound bites on my board at Brittany when she makes the puns.
And yeah, you can find us on all the social medias as well. Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Reddit, so on and so forth. YumYumPod or YumYumPodcast. We're always posting stuff on there, social media stuff. We're always furthering conversation, sharing memes, all of that stuff. And yeah, you can hit us up on those. All of that's in the description. You can email us at yumyumpod@gmail.com if you want to send over some questions or thoughts about things we've discussed on the episodes. Maybe we'll be able to read them out on the show. And yeah, it should be a good time. You can also rate and review us on whatever of the podcatchers allows you to do so. Rachel, do we have a Patreon?
Yes, we do.
What do we do on there?
We give people things extra.
Oh, okay. For money?
Yes.
I love money.
Extra things for money.
I love money. What kind of extra things do we give for money?
We provide our thoughts on other things that are not related to Star Trek or Babylon 5, such as video games or other TV series.
Podcasts sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we've got a whole plethora of things. We also have done some commentary tracks. Not commentary tracks. We have also done some discussions monthly for the Star Trek movies. Yep. We finally finished Star Trek movies.
Yes, we did.
Now there are no more Star Trek movies. They're threatening to make us another one, but we'll see if it ever comes to fruition. But
we've still got the best and worst episodes of Star Trek that we are working our way through.
Yes, the top 5s and bottom 5s according to IMDb of every given Star Trek except for the newer stuff. So that should all be there. And yes, again, check us out on all of that. Again, Julian, a pleasure to be discussing B5 with you. Rachel, good eating to you.
And good eating to you.
thing.